I just want to get right into this because I've been champing at the bit to talk about this story. Look, folks, it's been a tough month, honestly, in news. And there are very few bright spots that we can point to. But this is one thing that may give people who are feeling a bit hopeless a bit of joy. And that is that Amy Schumer got dragged by Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter on Twitter in a way that, honestly, if I were her, I would retire from public life and change my name if this ever happened to me. I doubt that that will be the case for her since she seems keen on centering herself in every situation. But Amy Schumer, the comedian, posted this clip of Martin Luther King Jr. speaking about anti-Semitism on and she posted it on her social media accounts. We'll watch this clip. But she's basically, within the context of what she's been posting, she's applying this to just Israel here. And it's another example of white people bastardizing the memory of Martin Luther King Jr. and exploiting it, not letting him rest, and not even living on with the values that he imbued in our society, to provide their claims with some sort of like artificial morality that does not exist. And King's daughter had something to say about this. But first, this is the clip that Schumer posted.
Must see that Israel must exist and has the right to exist and is one of the great outposts of democracy in the world.
My Jewish brothers and sisters said to me amid anti-Semitism anywhere, we don't need your support. We have enough Jewish power to deal with this problem ourselves. I would still take a stand against anti-Semitism because it's wrong, it's unjust, and it's evil. If my Catholic brothers and sisters said to me, amid bigotry toward Catholics, we don't need your support in this because we have enough Catholic power to deal with it, I would still take a stand against bigotry toward Catholics because it is wrong, it is evil, and it is unjust.
Must see.
So, I mean, that taken in a vacuum.
And also bomb them.
Yeah, right.
The terrorists, human shields.
With the way deepfakes are going.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Are going, they'll be making those soon. They'll be making.
Oh,
exactly. Yeah,
I'm sure. Those. Yeah, famously.
Parent to the religion. It's the motherlode of bad ideas.
MLK was anti-war, except when Hamas was using human shields, and then it's just kill them all. That's what his legacy was. Just, I mean, Martin Luther King speaking about anti-Semitism and saying it's horrible is very much in keeping with the values that he promulgated. Mm-hmm. We are also against anti-Semitism. What Amy Schumer's not telling you that at one point Martin Luther King, he was supposed to go to Israel and he canceled his trip there because of, I think it was the 6 Days War. We can look that up at some point, but it was, yes, 6 Days War, Haaretz. It was canceled due to it. So the history of this.
First of all, it's much clearer since MLK was killed.
Yes.
I mean, 1968.
Not that it wasn't, I think a lot of people weren't saying these sorts of things, but like, when we have Ilan Papian talks about the new Israeli historians that basically like showed the documents that said, yeah, this is ethnic cleansing. And even the government of Israel was aware of this. That was in the 80s.
Right.
So I like the idea that MLK would have the exact same analysis of, and say like Israel's democracy if he were still alive, I don't think so.
Well, I mean, it was the 1967 borders. Israel had just begun to go beyond those, right, at the period of his assassination. So it's just not applicable to this current context. And this is what Martin Luther King's daughter, who is still alive, had to say. Amy, certainly my father was against anti-Semitism, as am I. He also believed militarism along with racism and poverty to be among the interconnected triple evils. I am certain he would call for Israel's bombing of Palestinians to cease, for hostages to be released. and for us to work for true peace, which includes justice. He said justice is best, or at its best, is love, correcting everything that stands against love. We have much to correct. Here's a clip of my father talking about withdrawing from the Vietnam War and moral power. And do you want to play this? Honestly? Yeah, let's just play it. I mean, let's honor Bernice King's wishes here and actually portray what King was about.
The thing that the war in Vietnam could be stopped now without harm to this country?
Well, there are two ways to deal with it. One is a unilateral withdrawal. I don't oppose that because I feel that this is a possibility. After all, France withdrew unilaterally from Algeria. It withdrew without a military victory. And this did not lessen France's prestige or influence in the world. If anything, it increased its prestige in the world.
France is not the power that this country is.
Well, I think that's an even greater reason why we should restrain our power. There's always the danger that any nation will abuse its power. And I think our power must be much more than military power. We don't need to prove to the world or anybody our military power. I think we've got to prove our moral power.
Do you feel that this nation has abused, as you say, their power?
Oh, I certainly do in the war and peace.
And then she adds one more thing here. I encourage you to read Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? I mourn with all who are mourning. I know that we can't afford to diminish and dehumanize each other, and if we are truly committed to ridding humanity of the triple evils and to freedom from oppression for all. So I hope Amy Schumer got to reading. It doesn't seem like she did because she's DMing lesser-known black actresses.
Yeah, I want to get into this.
Criticisms you were going to say DMing lesser-known black activists, like DMing other children of like black activists, like Stokely Carmichael's son, and be like, "Hey, what would he think about this?" It's just like, you don't want to know, man.
Yeah, like I can't go for the big boss right now.
Can I get another kid of yesteryear? Yes,
a little lesser known.
Andrew Young's daughter, Andrew Young's kid.
But like this today, I'm sorry. Yesterday, Ta-Nehisi Coates did a talk.
We're gonna play that. Yeah.
In New York City, the black activists have had a historic solidarity with Palestinians, and this stupid white lady, who's really like never known true, like abject struggle and discrimination in her life, is lecturing other people on what it really is like to be marginalized in this country. The privilege is unimaginable, and I can't believe that people don't have like the kind of reflexive understanding, like Amy Schumer doesn't know how whiny and Karen-y she comes off.
This sort of fear of, and again, like sorry to keep mentioning Pappy, but this sort of fear of like, oh, it's actually a Holocaust, another Holocaust is right around the corner for everybody, including Amy Schumer, is part of Israel's propaganda to get them to get support, including, like, I mean, I can play the clip in a second here, but before we move in, like, that's the reason that they're scared, and they are propagandized, and to a certain extent you can have some sort of empathy or sympathy, whichever one, but while doing that, let's move on to her actually attacking these young actors, as you say. This is Asia Jackson, and she tweeted out, "It's so crazy to me how Bella and Gigi had to tiptoe around their statements, and then Amy Schumer's like, Gazans are rapists, and we'll still have a career."
Did not tag.
I just want to.
Bella and Gigi Hadid.
I just want to add here, models. Like when you brought up that, because I was going to bring that up, not that specific tweet, but the things that Amy Schumer was posting. Like I think people need to understand it wasn't just like her, like being a Karen and saying, trying to use, as ridiculous as it is, trying to use MLK's words to back like her feelings that she personally here in the United States of America as a wealthy comedian is under attack. She specifically posted things that were extremely bigoted and racist, and I think fear mongering is the wrong word. I think hate mongering is more, because literally what that actress, what was her name?
Asia Jackson.
Asia Jackson. She's not like embellishing here. Amy Schumer literally, I don't know if you guys can pull up the post, literally posted a comic like a drawn comic to her 4 point whatever million Instagram followers she has that literally showed depictions of Palestinians holding up signs that said depictions of either leftists or Palestinians. Pull up the picture, but
Yeah, we have it here.
basically did say Gazans rape women, things like that. Look at these things.
The largest one: Gazans rape Jewish girls only in self-defense.
Not even as as
Even
ridiculous
Hamas.
as it would be, still not Hamas even though, as ridiculous as that would have been too, to just put that on a sign as if that's what activists and protesters are doing. Not even Hamas, Gazans. And then that's not all she did. After she took that down, going, I'm just letting my emotions get ahead to me.
It's a tough time for me.
Here's this. Instead, she then posts a news headline from some like right-wing site or something like that. But the headline reads, "How much money Arab organizations donate to universities as her way of trying to explain, there must be some nefarious money behind all this Palestinian
No, she went from Hamas to Gazans to just all Arabs within the span of a few weeks of who she's going
Precisely.
after. Just to understand the deep racism here.
So I know, I think we should really like hit home here. This isn't like even like a Karen situation here.
Yeah.
This is like old school, straight up like Nazi status, right-wing bigotry, like white supremacist right-wing bigotry. This is like far right-wing stuff, like the stuff you would see like hooded KKK people. David Duke would share this type of stuff. Let's not
Brandon,
like fucking mince words here with what she's sharing. And on top of all that, as college students who will march down the street saying "Free Palestine" will get kicked out of school or lose their jobs or job prospects or whatever. And I'm specifically talking about people doing very basic stuff. Obviously, anyone who puts any sort of hate speech out there, they deserve whatever. I'm specifically talking about the accuracy and media focus, that right-wing group focusing on basically anyone who stands up for anything Palestine or criticizes the state of Israel and then labels them anti-Semitic just for that. They're losing any opportunities. They're getting harassed. They're getting those cars outside their homes, blasting them to their neighborhood. And Amy Schumer will very likely continue on with her career and not face any blowback for what she's doing, which is a bazillion times worse.
Brandon, you try to say something. I want to let you weigh in. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, these are classic tropes, like Bender was saying, regarding, classic white supremacist tropes, classic tropes used by, overclasses to justify imperialism, to justify the genocide of, minority populations within their country or outside of their country's borders. They were used against Black people in America. They were used against Native Americans. They were used against Jewish people during the Holocaust. They were used against other types of, Nazi designated deviant groups during the Holocaust, and these tropes have never left our society's like toolkit for how we justify our brutality. They've just been passed on from group to group. There's just always been a new, more acceptable target to assign these groups, to assign these labels to. And the lack of self-reflection from people who are are trying to mobilize the Holocaust that happened to Jewish people and other groups during World War II by the German Nazi state is, the lack of self-reflection is just, I think, glaring. I think it's hard for you to talk about it without going like, how do you not realize that this is exactly the same thing, that you're doing? And I think, partially it comes with the way that we have as a country, taught and educated people on what happened in the Holocaust, that we've made it something that is so very specific and inextricable from the nuances of Nazi Germany that people don't feel the need or rather don't have the ability to situate the things that we do in that same conversation of fascism. Most people don't even have the ability to situate like the German Nazi state into the context that it existed within that led to the Holocaust, because it becomes this, this example of an atrocity that existed outside of modernity, that just a bunch of evil people did something with no real buildup or context or acceptance from the world in the form of, the concentration camps that existed in Africa that were established by not just the German state, but other colonial powers prior to Holocaust, the extermination of Native American populations within the United States. It becomes a very, the conversations that we have about atrocities in this country lead themselves to only examine the most proximate causes so that these things can keep happening without anyone being able to go like, hey, when did we stop doing this sort of stuff? When did we stop having fascist components as part of our culture? And the answer is like never.
Yeah, I mean, and it's about it's completely taken the kind of identity element and the bigotry element out of the context of the structural power elements that led to the Holocaust. The act of dehumanization campaign, the fascist government in and of itself, versus just kind of the abstract identity association and the generational trauma that Jews have within them based on all of that history. But without the history, it's just the group identity that can lead people down paths like this to just sharing white supremacist, Nazi-esque, like really, really racist far-right stuff, because there is no base of material understanding about these structures.
Yeah, and what Israel is doing is much more easily explained by the history of colonialism and genocide that the Nazi state practiced against their people than it is explained by the Holocaust itself that happened to their people. And what they want to do is a bit of sleight of hand to make you not situate like, okay, but we have a history of Western society exterminating Native populations, exterminating, brown people abroad and at home. We have a history of them justifying that behavior due to the inherent barbarism of those people. There have been instances all across the Western history and civilization of them using these exact same tropes around like brown men just indiscriminately raping white women and indiscriminately beheading babies to justify wiping out entire populations. And that's what is contributing to this. That's what's contributing people like letting it happen. And that's what's contributing to them doing it. It has very little to do with what happened during the World War II, other than that precipitated to creation of the state of Israel.
Yeah. Let's now, I guess, turn to this here.
Get back to this Asia Jackson thing, because I think it shows a lot of what we're saying about Amy Schumer.
And by the way, it's not just about Amy Schumer. This is
indicative of...
This is the hysterical reaction of Zionists in the United States who are coddled like Amy Schumer and have no real actual understanding of the Palestinian struggle, making their own anxieties the central focus of a ongoing genocidal campaign.
So Asia writes, it's so crazy to me again how Bella and Gigi had to tiptoe around Bella and Gigi Hadid, their statements, and then Amy Schumer's like, Gazans are rapists and will still have a career. Amy Schumer got in touch with Asia. Asia says, girl, and then Amy Schumer, just don't do that. Just scroll down. Keep scrolling on that feed. And then Amy Schumer gets in her DMs and says, did something I post about my people being massacred upset you? And I think right there, you can just pause it. Did I post something about, because the thing is Amy, we aren't thinking in this way of my people. I'm worried about people getting massacred. I don't like I'm not here for any massacres. And what Schumer says right there, and when we look at like the death tolls of this past month, it's that she doesn't give a shit about Palestinians. So like, yeah, that's what upsets us about what you're saying, Amy Schumer. You can scroll down a little bit. And then continue. The Islamophobia and generalization of Gazan people did, which is exactly right. Continue on. Let's see if we can get. Yeah, here it is.
So she thought it ended there, and she woke up to this.
You can open up these. So let's see if I can zoom in here for folks.
I can read it if you'd like.
Yeah.
People all over the world are in the streets yelling for the murder of my people. You are not educated about the history of the Jewish people and the conflict. Thanks for expressing what you were upset about. I'd like to express that I think you are anti-Semitic.
Sure.
Do you have any Jewish friends? If they are If you do, they are all scared right now, frightened for their children and their lives. Is there a good Wendy clip for that? Also, that story about that person thinking you were so young. That's so funny. You must have been so annoyed. They thought you looked so young. What a cool video to post while I'm hoping someone doesn't slit my son's throat at school like they've been threatening to do and posting pictures of my house. But I deserve that, right? One day when you realize how you acted in this moment, I will accept your apology. All the best. And when you use this exchange to try to raise your profile and get shine, you are showing yourself.
And what that is there, that last little
Threat.
thing is a threat. This is, I want to be able to come into your DMs and call you an anti-Semite, and I want to make sure you can't actually expose me for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What,
She
wait,
just
what,
asked-
what did she mean by Wendy clip? What is she talking about?
Wendy Williams, I
Wendy
imagine.
Williams probably.
Yeah.
Did this, hold on. Did this woman, like, did the woman she talked to, like, work for Wendy Williams, or is this straight up, like, anti-black racism as well?
Yes, well, I don't know. Maybe she posted the Wendy Williams clip
That's
on
my
her
thought. I think she looked at her
Instagram.
profile.
She looked at her
and
profile
looked at two
and
different
basically
things.
saying, my people are getting slaughtered and you're posting about Wendy Williams. How silly are you? And Amy, and she responded, very curious to hear how you know that I'm not educated about the history of the conflict. How do you know that? You literally just followed me. You don't know who I am. How is it anti-Semitic to call you out for the racist things you've said since 2015? And it is not. This is an example of a very privileged person victimizing themselves and centering their own fears as a mass murder. Like, she talks about the fear about her son's throat getting slit at school.
Palestinian kid got killed by his landlord.
Yeah, I'm very fearful of all of. I'm fearful of all of the hate crimes that come
They should
from
all be
this.
followed up, yes.
But you know whose sons are getting murdered? A child dies in Gaza right now every 15 minutes, and that's probably a conservative estimation. So as she centers her anxiety about that happening to her family, you know who that's happening to right now? Hundreds, thousands of families in Gaza.
Also, generally, when a group is an underclass, we don't allow them to use their anxiety about the violence that happens to them as an excuse to wipe out large portions of populations. And that anxiety and that fear, especially as it's expressed by white women for their children, has in colonialism, has in imperialism, has in the history of this country and the Western world been very often used as an excuse for, lynching black people, killing entire populations of Native Americans, committing the Holocaust. These are like tropes that she is evoking in defense of doing another genocide that ultimately are so very well contextualized by the history of Western brutality against Native populations and brown populations. And, she's just pretending as though it's entirely rooted in generational trauma. And I definitely am sympathetic to that as a Black American, as someone who has friends who are all across the, spectrum in terms of like disability and race and ethnicity and religion. But the ability to express that is like that fear, that generational trauma is a legitimate excuse to execute people is something that we literally do not allow except for from the most privileged of white people. When like a Black person knocks on someone's door and they get so frightened that they shoot through it and kill them. That's the only time you hear that narrative and it has any weight within our society. So people should reflect on that fear is being mobilized in such a way to justify, genocide, and that it's being allowed is something that we just do not afford to every population, no matter how legitimate their fear for violence actually is.
Yeah, I want to play this Ilan Pappy clip about fear and the way the Israeli government uses it towards war ends. This is from a while ago. He looks like a lot younger man here. But
all of this is so relevant, like that newspaper clipping of the IDF propaganda and what they go through. They were talking about human shields and, that kind of thing years ago.
Yeah.
This is all just a recycling of what the Israeli government has been doing for decades.
This is same as it ever was.
And yet now, apparently this conflict just started on October 7th, according to most people on Instagram.
Yeah, but this goes back to 48.
Now, I also remember seeing in one of the many atlases, many of the maps on the history of the conflict, that there was always this famous map of 1948. You had thick arrows coming from the Arab world, and very thin, hardly discernible arrows coming from the Jewish side to enforce this idea of David and Goliath. Now, looking at the document, it was very clear that there was, at the beginning of the war, a parity in the number of soldiers on both sides. And very early on in the war, the Jews had the upper hand in terms of soldiers, ammunition, logistics, and so on. So that was one myth that we had to deal with. And for us, as Israelis, it was important, because it was not just a question whether we were superhumans or not, because there was a very normal explanation why we won the 48 war, which has nothing to do with David beating Goliath. But there was also, it was connected to the myth that Israel was under on the eve of a second Holocaust, on the eve of extermination. It was not. And we all, I say we because I learned later on that I was not the only one who worked on the issue. Benny Morris and other historians, later to be known as the new historians, worked more or less at the same time, and we all came to the same conclusions. And we found, or I found, that the leaders of the Jews in Palestine knew exactly the balance of power. So they produce an atmosphere of fear, saying that the Jews are under the threat of extermination, in order to raise the mobilization, the commitment of the Jewish community in Palestine. But they knew, in actual terms, that such a danger did not exist. And again, if you think about the American public, it was very important to sell to the American public that Israel is constantly under the danger of being annihilated or exterminated, which blurs or obfuscates any American wish to look at the situation in a more balanced position.
There you go. If you want to look at this in a more balanced way, you support another Holocaust.
Yep. Anyway, okay. Let's take a call here. Thought we'd have more fun with Amy Schumer, but the stuff she posted is so disgusting that it's not even fun. It's not even fun.
Fun with Amy Schumer? I don't know if that's possible.
Well, you know what's so annoying, and maybe I'm revealing my white womanness with this, but I had defended her in the past because I thought she was like a little bit unfairly targeted due to misogyny. I'd like that erased from the record for the rest of time.
Every day I feel more and more vindicated in my anti-stand-up comedy position.